It's funny. The number one thing that listeners of this podcast ask me for is to take an episode and actually flip the tables where someone interviews me. And I've historically been a bit reluctant to do it because it feels a little self aggrandizing or whatever the term is. But hey, you got to give the people what they want. So on this episode, my buddy Mike Wu, the founder of Hireframe and the host of What Work podcast, he interviews me on my transition to full time content creation from CFO, and we talk about how I sold a company and then fired myself immediately. We also speak to why having supportive partners in any entrepreneurial endeavor is the real key to success. So, shout out to my wife. And we touch on how I came up with the idea for my second newsletter, Looking for Leverage. Mike's a really gracious host. So, shout out to him for letting me share this with my audience. We'll link to both Mike's podcast, What Worked, and his company, Hireframe, in the show notes. Check them out if you're looking to hire with great help internationally. This one is for anyone who's curious about selling a company, making the leap to entrepreneur, being the CEO of me, baby, and deciding on how to launch new product lines. Because I'm running a media empire. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. Today's podcast is brought to you by Zenskar. Are you still operating like it's 2015? Data entry, spreadsheet calculations, and waiting for developers? A lot has changed, amigos. It's time to catch up. Zenskar is an AI-powered order-to-cash platform. Imagine having an extra pair of hands in your finance team. Sending a credit note? Done. Creating a report? It's in your inbox already. Wondering why your collections fell? Here are potential reasons why. Zenskar AI does all the heavy lifting for you so you can focus on what matters. Your customers demand flexible pricing options. Your sales team throws in custom terms to close deals. Traditional platforms force you to manual fixes, spreadsheets, or developers. On Zenskar, everything is on autopilot. Just send your contracts and usage to the platform. It automates everything downstream: billing, revenue recognition, collections, and SaaS metrics. It is everything you need to scale smarter without losing control, so you can do more with less. The best part, it works as an extension of your team. Hands-on support at every step of the migration, implementation, and beyond. Ready to leave behind the manual mayhem? I know I am. Step into the future of finance today. Visit zenskar.com/RTN and book a demo. That is ZENSKAR.com/RTN. ZENSKR.com/RTN. Check it out in the show notes and book a demo. Woo! I think to become a CFO, there's this funny dance where like they want you to have been one before. It's like, well, how do I become one if I haven't been one? It's like this circular reference.
That's a common meme in the staffing and recruiting world, which we are in
Really?
at Hireframe. It's like this is an entry level job that requires 8 years of experience.
Yeah, I have seen that before.
Hey, welcome to another episode of What Worked. Today, we are very lucky to have CJ Gustafsson on the podcast. CJ is the writer and founder of Mostly Metrics, and he's building a fantastic media company. I actually discovered him myself, personal discovery, via YouTube. So encourage you guys to check out his stuff. But without further ado, CJ, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the pod, Mike. I feel like I made it because the name of the pod is What Worked, so something must be working, which is pretty cool. But
Totally.
sure, like I'm a CFO by trade, tech company most recently, exited that about 6 months ago, which was an exciting process to go through a sale, kind of show that I could drive the car from point A to point B as a CFO. And before that, I came up in the FP&A world for tech companies, which for those who haven't heard of that department, they like come up with your budget, they help you allocate resources, they help you look at your operating plan and say, where can we be more efficient? Where should we invest in the business? And then before that, I was on the other side of the table working at a private equity firm and then also doing some consulting. So my whole career has kind of revolved around business models, optimizing them, looking at the metrics that go in and go out. And it's been really fun, specifically within the tech industry, because there's so much that's evolved. And I've taken that and I've started to write about it. I've actually been writing for over 4 years now online. I have a newsletter called Mostly Metrics, and it became bigger than I thought it could on Substack. Not at first. I mean, like the first 2 years, nobody listened to me. I was writing into the abyss. But over the last 2.5 years, it's grown to 65,000 subscribers as of today. So there are a lot of nerds out there. And then I also have a podcast called Run the Numbers, where I interview CFOs and I also talk to business model experts. And that gets somehow like 50,000 listens a month. So I feel really fortunate to now do this full time. I didn't know it was a real job you could have, but I guess it is.
100%. And yeah, I'm one of those nerds that's been following along. I got to ask you, like, can we go back even further? You kind of like have had this up and to the right finance career that I think a lot of like maybe business school graduates or like, undergraduates, pursuing a role maybe in accounting or finance, investment banking, private equity would want to have. Did you always know you wanted to like take this path? Like, what were you like growing up or maybe like your college years? What were you thinking?
Well, thanks for saying that because like it certainly didn't feel like I was going up and to the right in the moment. In fact, I think I didn't find my product market fit until I went over to what I'll call the operator side. I wasn't that good at private equity. I was okay at the consulting, but I wasn't that interested in it. I felt like more of like a financial tourist. Like I'd pop in and pop out, didn't really have skin in the game. Thanks for saying that because like I feel like it did take me a while to get my footing, but like the wonder of LinkedIn and everything else is you just get to write your story in reverse. You get to look back and kind of connect the dots. And so it looks great now, but um you learn what you're good at, what you're interested in, and what you're uniquely qualified to do. And like what I did was I stacked a bunch of those building blocks together or kind of smashed them together, if you will, to create kind of like a skew of one, which is what I'm doing with writing about finance and also trying to do it in a way that's somewhat entertaining. To answer your question though, like to go way back, I always loved writing growing up, which makes it kind of funny that I went to Boston College for a finance degree undergrad. Like I think the people that knew me, they're like, he's always like tinkering around with like creating blogs on the internet or writing stuff like for my school newspaper in high school or in college. So I think that would have been more the path, but it took me a while to find like the lane that I would do that in. Growing up, I was obsessed with Sports Center. I was obsessed with anything Bill Simmons wrote. I used to read this blog called Deadspin that I thought was hilarious back in the day. And so like I've always been really interested about like the creation of media online. It's really cool now that I get to do it myself. But like I didn't know this was a career like coming out of college.
That's a very cool to hear. I'm not surprised that you've always been a writer or you've always been drawn to writing because your writing is really great. I think it's very hard to write about numbers and metrics and make it both really educational and interesting and entertaining at the same time. And I think you accomplish all those things. That's how I got drawn in. From your YouTube channel, I thought you took an interesting approach, like more like fun approach to these topics, which are usually pretty dry. And then it funneled me into the newsletter, which I was like, oh, same vibe here. So
Hell yeah.
not sure if that's what
The
you're trying to do, but it
Yeah,
worked
the
on me.
network effects kicking in. I've proved it in real time. I think finance in particular has always had like this wall up where like people want to act like they're smarter or they want to throw around terms that make it hard to understand. And I think it all goes back to like the scarcity complex. Like if everybody understands it, then I'm not going to be able to make the most money, which I don't think is necessarily true. And so what I try to do is demystify a lot of what's on the other side of the curtain and do it in a way that creates like an on ramp. I think it's too difficult to get up to speed, particularly when you talk about finance within the tech industry, because that's not like straightforward gap accounting, if you will. It's not like just what you see on a P&L and you could do with an accounting degree. There is a bit of flair and nuance to it.
That resonates. I want to kind of go to, if it's okay with you, like your last stint as a CFO. It sounds like you helped shepherd this company to an exit, successful exit, which I think for a lot of CFOs, that's like a really important accomplishment to have and good experience to have overall. And then you took the leap, and you're like, hey, I'm gonna double down on this content, this media stuff. Could you tell us about the acquisition and what that was like for you as a CFO, and then kind of after that talk about the jump?
Yeah. I think to become a CFO, there's this funny dance where like they want you to have been one before. It's like, well, how do I become one if I haven't been one? It's like this circular reference.
That's a common meme in the staffing and recruiting world, which we are in at
Really?
Higher Frame. It's like this is an entry level job that requires 8 years of experience.
Yeah, I have seen that before. Like looking for entry level accountant with 12 years of experience
Yeah,
and a master's degree in SEC accounting. It's like, okay, maybe I can't do that one. But yeah, so like I took a chance on this company. They took an even bigger chance on me because I was probably relatively young for the age. I became CFO, I think, at age 31. And I hadn't done it before. And along that path, in 2.5 years, we quadrupled revenue, which was cool. We got to profitability. We built like a durable company that could stand on its own. We raised a Series C, and then we sold it. And so, like, we didn't recreate the wheel, but like we drove the car, like I said, from point A to point B. We got, more money back to our investors than they put in, and everyone was high-fiving at the end, which I think is a success story. What goes on behind the scenes, though, is you just feel like you're digging trenches, I think, each day, and you don't really know what the end goal is going to be. I think when you take VC money, which we did, you are essentially always up for sale, right? Like eventually you're going to have some sort of liquidity event. So you have to figure out like what you want to look like when that time comes, and how to optimize for it. And I think that's where I had both the most fun, and then I think it also almost killed me like in the final year there, because you're trying to keep this train on the tracks, but you also know that you're approaching an event where you're going to have a lot of conversations about like why you're the right asset for someone to acquire. And that takes a lot of energy, and then there's also the emotions wrapped up in it, no matter how you slice it, especially for the people who found the company and have been doing it for 10 plus years. So I think like I learned a ton about the financial process of selling a company, but I learned even more about the human process of running a company and then exiting.
Yeah, could you share some of the human component you just mentioned? I think that's really interesting for our audience here.
People work at a job because they want to provide for their families, and a lot of the time you're giving them equity compensation for taking a bet on you and for investing their time. And so I always took it really personally that I wanted everybody to walk away with something at the end of that, because the reality is like 70% of the time you don't get anything back. Like the equity ends up just being something you put in a drawer, forget about, and doesn't really turn into anything. So I think like at the end, especially for the executives and the founders, like there's real money on the line. And whenever there's money on the line, emotions do tend to pop up around like decision making and how to optimize this, what it means for me. And as a CFO, you have this dual role where you have the fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders, and then you also have a responsibility to your employees and to your boss, the CEO. And then also in the back of your head, like it's only human, you're like, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen for me too? And by the way, for those who don't know, like after an acquisition goes through, CFO is like always the first one that gets fired. Like they usually have a CFO, right?
Yeah, redundancy. Yeah, one
And
for
I
one.
I I knew that going in. Like it's all part of the game in a sense. Like you do your stint,
Yeah, it's
you
a weird dynamic. Yeah, let's double click into that because
yeah,
it's like
sure.
you're grinding, working your tail off for a successful outcome, which is a sale, which is also equals like a termination.
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
It's a total like mind warp to think
Yeah.
about. Now, I think I was a bit different because like I had been incubating mostly metrics in the background. Like I said, I've been writing online for 4 years, and it actually helped me get that first CFO job. But you are thinking like, I'm not only bringing this company to the end of this chapter, I'm bringing my own career to the end of this chapter. So what's next for me? And I was really positive about it too. It does feel a little bit like you're like breaking up with your girlfriend a bit because you love this company that you've put a lot into, but at the same time you're going to move on to something different. And a lot of people said to me like, "Oh, well you exited a company for this much, now you can go and do one for that much." Like it's just this ladder you climb. And I think the more I thought about it throughout the experience, and like it's not like I was, thinking about my next step the whole time. I needed to concentrate on what was at hand. I think I said, well, what makes me happiest, and where does my product market fit plug into this? And the conclusion that I came to is like, I want it to be a CEO someday. And the way you become a CEO is either you become a professional CEO for like a private equity backed company, or you go and start your own thing. And that's what I decided to do instead. Yeah, just like you.
Yeah.
And so that was the path I took with going all in on building a media company.
Awesome. No, that's really cool like journey that you just took us on. Where it sounds like you've always kind of had this writing kind of toolkit and like momentum behind you. Like maybe you've always wanted to do that, but you were just like waiting for the right moment, both like passively and proactively. But when it came to the time, like, did you have any reservations?
I think you always do. It's kind of like you're stepping off a cliff. Now, I was lucky enough where I had built some relationships with advertisers to set me up to know I had some runway. And then I had also just exited a company. And along with that, you can pay down a bit of your debt, which is nice. And my wife was really supportive. Like, I got young kids, and she was like, "You've always wanted to do this." I think what she said to me is like, "What's the worst thing that happens? Like, you go back to being a CFO, and like, that's an amazing job too." And so I think, like, the pain of not knowing what something could be would eat at me more than, like, any sort of failure, and I've had a number of failures trying to start stuff. Like, this was not the first company per se I've tried to start. Like, I had one company where I lost, like, over $209,000 of my own money trying to build, something in the tourism industry, and that didn't work out. I've written about that online if people wanna check it out, but, it's funny that, like, the thing that took the least amount of capital investment. It took a lot of time to start and a lot of, like, I think time as like a moat of like building up your resume online. But like it's
Yeah.
funny that the thing that cost like no money to start other than buying a domain was the thing that like took off the most out of all the stupid stuff I've tried.
It's funny how things work sometimes. Yeah, yeah. I got to take a moment here to shout out to all the supportive partners out there helping us take these leaps.
Oh yeah, man. Like having my wife push me towards something, knowing because she like saw the energy that I had from doing it, and also being like, "I'll help you." Like, she helps me with a lot of the event stuff that we do
Oh,
on
cool,
the side and
nice.
whatnot. So, like, having somebody who A, believes in you and B, is like, "Don't worry, I can step in and help you sometimes," and you feel unsure of, like, doing something that's unnatural, um, that means a lot.
That's awesome. Let's talk more about Mostly Metrics. I think this is the newsletter, the Substack that you've been writing for years, even prior to you going full time on it. You mentioned earlier, like you were just posting into the abyss for 2 years. Can you take us into that? Because in particular, I think there's a lot of like either executives or soon to be founders of companies that listen to our podcast. They know that they should be publishing, posting some content, putting some stuff out there, putting themselves out there, or they're just job seekers, right? They should be putting content out there. But it's hard, especially when it's hard to do in the early days when you have no traction. What was that abyss like?
I think everybody imagines, like, this really mean person from, like, middle school or high school just, like, waiting for you to post something so they can be like, "Oh, you suck." The reality is nobody's waiting for you to post anything. Like, you have to jump up and down, light your hair on fire for anyone to pay attention to you. I hate to say it, but people are, like, inherently selfish, and they're only gonna read something if it helps them in some way. But, like, the writing was for me at first. It was a way to exercise this muscle of, like, how to talk about businesses, business models, and metrics because I was learning so much. And it took on multiple evolutions where, like, the initial product per se did not have product market fit, but I kept honing what I was writing about. I kept getting better at actually writing. And then I kind of figured out what gave me energy and also aligned with what my audience wanted to learn. And I think the biggest mistake I made early on and why it didn't get traction is I was writing for like this fictional smart person that I thought was out there. And the real answer was just to write for like me 5 years ago, or even me today, Googling something 10 times and I can't find the satisfactory answer. Like are way more people out there who are similar to that than like this imagined smart person that I had in my head.
Very, very cool. So yeah, if I were to try to distill that, is you were one working on your own skill, your own writing muscles, and then really figuring out who you're writing for, like who the specific like um, audience archetype, and you kind of figured that person out. Today, you mentioned Mostly Metrics has 65,000 and growing every probably minute subscribers. I don't know through Substack. I haven't written a newsletter before, but do you have a good sense of like who all out there is
Yeah.
reading?
About 25% are actual CFOs. About 15%, I think, are investors. At least 30% work in finance departments or the office of the CFO. And then we have a lot of people who are interested in how to monetize their own businesses, whether they're a CEO or they're like a pricing expert or they're responsible for making like the marketplace or SaaS company they work at just more efficient. They tune in. That also impacts how I think about what I write. And so, like, every time I sit down to write something, or really before I hit post, I think, is this for, because I want it to be shareable, right? Is this for the CJ 10 years ago who was working in an FP&A department trying to get smarter, who can share this with their boss to say, look how smart I am and signal that? Or is this for CJ, the CFO, who would share it with his team to say, hey, we should really look at incorporating this into our monthly cadence? Or is it for the third bucket, the investor who wants to quote unquote add value and wants to brush up on different terms or different ways of looking at business, who will forward it to the CFO at their portfolio companies saying we should incorporate this in the next board meeting. And by doing that, I'm solving for like the job to be done for one of those audiences. Sometimes it's more than one, and it allows for it to spread organically on its own.
I want to give people a taste, a sample of the type
Yeah.
of stuff you write about. They're getting a feel for who you are. And so I want to layer in like some of the topics. Is there a recent like topic that you wrote about post that you could like quickly give the TLDR? I think you have that even at the bottom of your post usually. I read
Yeah.
the one about customer success this morning, but there's many.
Yeah, we can hit on that one. It's fresh in my memory. So I've always grappled with this question of how much you should invest in customer success. And so customer success is different than customer support at most companies. Customer support is like I forgot my login or like something's broken and I need help. Where customer success is like how do I onboard this customer to be useful within the app and then also get value out of it so they want to buy more from us and expand over time and make sure that they don't churn so we get a higher customer lifetime value out of them. And what I was riffing on in today's post is like you can do some simple sanity checks, like almost like an acid test of okay, we're a $10 million ARR company, we expect to get $1 million out of expansion dollars next year, which means our net dollar retention rate, which is a measure of how much a customer would technically grow if you just left them on their own year over year, of 110%. So therefore, if I want to get that money back in a year and allow the annuity stream of, future products or licenses that they buy to grow over time, maybe I should spend $1 million or less on my customer success department. So it's just like squaring things in your head of like, this makes sense. This is rational of where I'm allocating resources. And then I went on to discuss how there are all different types of customer success teams. Some are involved in onboarding, some are just order takers, some are really salespeople. And so they can come in all different shapes and sizes, which I'm sure you probably see even in the seat that you're in today.
Yeah, totally. We staff a lot of customer onboarding specialists. So oftentimes supporting the true customer success managers who are expanding after landing the accounts. Those onboarding specialists are not really revenue generating, but they are part of the overall customer experience team. And I think you mentioned one thing to consider is maybe like considering, when you think about the financials, their costs as a cost of goods sold.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like another thing that we always discuss on mostly metrics of like you have different sections of your profit and loss statement, one of which is cost of goods sold, which leads you to your gross margin. And gross margin is an indicator of how scalable is this business. Basically, how much money do I have left to run everything else after I serve my customer successfully? And the whole rub with customer success teams traditionally has been like, well, do you put them in sales and marketing, which goes in OPEX, which makes you look better? Or do you put them in cost of goods sold, which hurts your gross margin, makes your company look not as scalable, but maybe academically honest because they don't actually sell something. So that's always been like a hotly debated topic.
Totally. And I think that's the reason why there's many different accounting methodologies.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. No, thanks for sharing that. I have to ask you too, like, remind me how often you publish in Mostly Metrics.
I publish Tuesday and Sunday, which are free posts with an
Uh-huh.
advertisement on top. And then I have a paid post on Thursday. And then since I went
Okay.
full time on it, I started another newsletter, which is kind of like a more specialized version of Mostly Metrics, but just for operators at private equity backed uh, portfolio companies. And that's called Looking
Yeah.
for Leverage.
Looking for leverage. I just subscribed to that one too. And
Thanks,
that's
man.
interesting to us because we work with a lot of PE backed software companies who are, I think they look into higher frame for cost savings, margin improvement, and some like operational flexibility with headcount. But yeah, tell us about looking for leverage. You have Mostly Metrics is firing. You went full time. You're like, hey, like I got to do even. You're publishing 3-4 times a week. I got to publish even more now.
I know.
And for like a very specific audience, I think that maybe there's some overlap, but maybe not with Mostly Metrics.
I'd been searching for like another cut of my audience to serve. And at first I was going to do it like, oh, I'm really passionate about marketplace businesses. But then I'm like, nobody wakes up every morning. They're like, I'm a marketplace person. And then I was going to do it for vertical software companies. And it was kind of the same thing. But what I did discover is that there was this audience of people who identified as being the C suite at private equity backed companies who had like a very different set of constraints they had to operate under. In fact, I was at a conference, I was in a room with 42 other CFOs and COOs who work for a specific private equity company's portfolio. I was like, they're talking about like way different things than like a hyperscale VC growth company who's burning cash to talk about. And I'm like, I can't find anything useful online other than like written by investors. Like there has to be another voice here of like the person who's actually operating the companies. So that's what I work backwards towards. And it was like pretty organic the way that I think I approached writing about it because it's kind of taking the same skill set and tone from Mostly Metrics, but like applying it to a somewhat tangential problem set.
Yeah, very cool. And so you've got, oh, and by the way, we got to touch on Run the Numbers. So Run the
Oh yeah.
Numbers is your podcast that you do audio and video. It's on YouTube. Please check it out. We'll link to it for sure. But yeah, briefly, you interview CFOs on this podcast, right? And
Yeah. Well, I think like every newsletter, you either die a newsletter or you live long enough to become a podcast. And so I ended up coming up with a podcast too. And it was really just like an expansion of all these combos I was having with CFOs who were reading Mostly Metrics. And I'm like, I should just record some of these. And so I have to admit, it was super hard to get like the first 50 guests, but like I'm approaching 200 episodes now, I think. And like now a lot of people actually ask to come on, which is nice because they're like, oh, I find value in these conversations, or I saw someone else cool that came on. Like I think that like I'd be a good person to participate and talk about like what I've learned. And 2 out of the 3 episodes I do a week, I'm interviewing like a world class CFO. The CFOs that I have on are like they were at companies that were like crazy compared to like what I did. So sometimes I think I do have a bit of the imposter syndrome, but like I'm like okay, at least I did it. I got an exit. But like I talked to them about their decision making frameworks, their favorite metrics, how they look at businesses, the human problems involved in like scaling any company. And that's been like a really cool way to explore like the world that I came from the angle of the CFO. And sometimes all of their investors on too to kind of fill in the gaps.
very cool. Yeah. So Run the Numbers, check that out. And so I want to highlight like, is there anything else, by the way? Is there anything we're missing? Are those the three kind of pillars to the
Those are
to
the
media
three. And
company?
then in the background, I've started to get into some benchmarking because
Cool.
what's cool about having an audience now is I can survey them and ask them questions on things that they will find inherently useful to give back to them. But it's like the collective knowledge and insights of the group, and then synthesizing that and giving it back to them in a report. So I started to put that as like the main carrot behind the paid offering. And it's something that like I've always been interested in because it's a lot of the benchmarking stuff of like we said, how much should I invest in customer success? It's like, well, I can poll 65,000 people on what they're doing, and maybe that'll be a better answer than what I can come up with.
Yeah, super valuable work that you're doing there with benchmarking. It makes total sense with the audience and the media products you have out today. And so I wanted to highlight, yeah, that you have this mix of things. It's like 4 things actually now, and you probably got a handful of good ideas that you're sleeping on right now. But I wanted to ask you, like, how do you do it? how, do you, how, how do you do it? We have this podcast, What Worked. This is our second year doing it, and it's a lot of work to do just a podcast. But you're writing too, and in particular, I want to ask you about the writing. Like,
Yeah.
do you have certain systems or processes that help you publish high quality content, really high quality content, at a high volume too? Now,
I wish I had like a real system, but I think it's more just like this lens that I see the world through. And I steal this from Ben Thompson, someone that I look up to who writes Stratechery, who's kind of the first person to really write online at scale about business strategy. And he's like, at some point, you just kind of see the world and the news you consume and everything that's going on in businesses, and then it's synthesized through this like filter almost in your head of like, what could I write about here? Honestly, though, I'm just following my curiosity. I think I put way too much pressure on myself at first to like create something net new or like a new formula or a new idea. It's like just give your perspective and try to distill it down to something that other people can understand. And what people I think overestimate is like how much other people actually already know about something. And even if you do know about it, it's nice to hear a refresher on it or a different opinion. And so I don't have a system per se for writing. It's more just a view. In terms of like the hours, I'm definitely better at writing early in the morning or late at night. Like you can't get an intelligent thought out of me at 3:30 p.m. Like there's no newsletter being written.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just look forward to continue following all of the content you're putting out. I do want to ask you, in the name of the podcast, what worked. You had a couple things that really, you shared prior to us hitting record. Compound effort,
Oh yeah.
and also just like making sure that everyone at the company knows how the company makes money. Maybe can we
Yeah.
start with that one? That one sounds simple, but could you explain what that means?
Yeah. It's something I'm really passionate about. Whenever somebody would start at a company or join my team, I would ask them, even in the interview process, really, I'd say, hey, would it be helpful if I gave you like a 1 minute overview on how we make money? Even if they said no, I would probably still say it. But I think that how a company monetizes impacts every other part of the org. So to give you an example, the last company I worked at, we were a marketplace for aftermarket car parts. So we did over 80,000 transactions a day. Good chance you bring your car into a garage, you need new brake pads, they procure it through our site. And then we also had a SaaS component on top of it. So I would walk people through the purchase pattern of like how many people would buy something a day, who would pay us in that transaction, like something that you people just assume they know, but they might not. There could be all different components paying. It could be the person coming in to get their car fixed, it could be the garage, it could be the supplier, it could be the manufacturer. And so like these are examples of things that every company has something unique about how they deliver their services, who pays them, and then what's important also is how much you make on each transaction. So what's your gross profit on it? If you as a company are profitable at the end of the day once you pay for all our salaries, and how big the overall opportunity is for us to continue to do that. And I found that like people always have this sense of like relief in knowing and how it all works because they don't want to quote unquote ask a stupid question. And it also helps prime the pump for them to ask me questions if it's during the interview or someone who's working on the team. And I get to know them better and how they think about things. And a lot of times they'll actually say something that makes me think about our own business model differently. So I always encourage people to explain how they make money to everyone, whether they're in engineering, finance, or product.
Yeah, that's a great lesson, and I think when you can get the whole company understanding like the business model, for example, I think that's a really great insight because it sounds obvious, but when you work in a company and if you think about it, if you had to ask everyone like how does the company make money, people would probably like it'd be a hard question to answer for probably many people who don't think about that day to day because they think about just their job. But if you can think about your job and then the bigger picture, I think you'll be much better at your job. I
It
think that's
also makes them feel like they're contributing to something bigger than themselves. Like the
totally.
number of conversations I've had with like the engineering team, and I'm like, that product you're working on, it makes this much money. They're like, what? Like I'm
Yeah.
helping do that. Like it helps link their efforts to what everyone is rowing the boat towards.
Yeah, I like this one too. I think I'm going to use it because we staff people at different various companies, and a lot of times our customers who are like maybe the head of customer success or the CFO at the company has like accountants from Hireframe. They're always asking us for tips. Hey, how do I work with this person? How do I keep them engaged? What's the best way to manage them? And overall, it's the same way you would manage anyone, no matter where they are, regardless of their location. But this is a big one. It's like because oftentimes we're hiring like a staff accountant or a customer onboarding specialist, and they might be, supporting a customer success manager who's supporting a senior CSM and then head of CX, and it's just like they're far removed from the executive leadership team who might be talking about the business model all the time. And so we're like, hey, don't forget during their onboarding, tell them about the business and how they fit into it and how they impact the results. And tell them what the results are that you guys are trying to drive. Yeah, so that's a cool insight that you share of like what worked for you.
It's even a challenge like the further you get from the actual transaction, the more like opaque it becomes on like what's happening and how you're actually making money off something.
Yeah,
And it impacts how you make the product because you want to make it easy to use. I've even noticed people closest to the transaction sometimes don't understand. So funny stories. We had a BDR once at a company and he was like, hey, I really think I should be being paid more because my account's brought in $2 million this month. I'm like, dude, you don't know that we only make 1% of that, and just not knowing how the system
The
worked
model. Yeah.
gave them like a false level of confidence about like what was going on. So like that's
Yeah.
more of like a funny thing that happened, but like it's everywhere, all over the org.
Yeah, totally. And it sounds like he was already good at his job, but he would probably be even better
Yeah, come
if
back when
he
you're doing
understood this
200
piece.
million a month.
Yeah, exactly. Very cool. The second piece here is like the compounding effort. Tell me about this. This is something I think we're going to touch on something that's like really close to my heart, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, well, I think it was Benjamin Franklin said like compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. I think compound effort is the most glorious thing ever. It's like every day if you can get, and I think it was James Clear who said like get 1% better, like what that turns into, like you just continue to stack small wins, and you just got to start earlier. And writing online was like the definition of compound effort for me. Like I've posted my timeline before of like I think it took me almost 2 years to get to 400 subscribers, and then after that I broke through and went from 400 to 40,000 in the next 2 years, and now I'm on 65,000. But like people assume everything's an overnight success story, but whenever you dig into someone's background, you see these cookie crumbs of like the efforts that they put in and how it led them from one thing to the other. And so, especially in a game like a newsletter or a podcast, like you got to put yourself out there and you got to continue to hone your craft. I'm a really big boxing fan, and I love when they show not just the fight, but like the footage of like someone grinding in the gym, because you're like, oh, they're thinking through the rounds ahead of time and they're letting that effort from each training camp compound over time. That's very much how I think of like any craft that I try to undertake.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Very insightful. I also do love those behind the scenes, whether it's like the boxing leading up to the match or hard knocks or something like
Oh, I
that. Those
love that
are
stuff. I'm a
love that
sucker for
stuff.
it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I know we're short on time here, so I want to start wrapping up a little bit. I have a couple more questions, but AI, I have to ask about it. It's something that's top of mind for everyone, especially the CFOs that we work with here at Hireframe. But I saw that you recently posted, you've posted about AI, of course, because it's topical. But for CFOs or like the office of the CFO, AI, just what takes on AI do you have? Any advice for, finance organizations, companies in general around AI?
Well, this kind of links to what we were talking about compound effort. Everybody thinks they're behind when it comes to AI, but I did this survey on Mostly Metrics, and it showed that like nearly nobody has like concrete use cases that they're using org wide. So if you can just start with one use case, like, oh, we're going to automate this part of our billing process, or we're going to do something around travel booking, like those wins add up over time. I think that the two ways that AI is helpful, if you look at the larger org, are A, does this reduce headcount? So there's some pretty clear examples of that. Like you need less customer support people because a chatbot can answer, like, here's your login. And then the other way is, will this make the existing people more useful? And I think people overemphasize the will this cut down on headcount? And what they underemphasize are the compounding wins you can get from like pulling someone who's like, maybe like a 4 out of 10 engineer up to like a 6 out of 10. Like it may sound small, but like that's a huge leap if you let their efforts compound over time when they come into work every day. So I've been really interested in ways to make existing employees more efficient. And it's kind of like this marriage of like the people and the technology. A lot of people look at AI like, oh, it's going to replace the people. It's like, no, how can the people harness it to be better at their jobs?
Love that. That's a great answer. That's how we're thinking about it here at Hireframe too. How can we couple AI and talent and just really shepherd into this new? I always think about it as an org chart. What does like the modern SaaS org chart
Oh,
look
that's
like?
cool.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And I guess last question for you, CJ. When you look hard enough, there are some CFOs who have made the leap and become CEOs and started their own companies. You're one of them. I recently interviewed Julian Rollins, who did the same thing. He was a CFO and he started a company called Cashboard. Any advice? As I think there's a lot of CFOs who are thinking about this, who sometimes probably there are many CFOs who think about it their entire career but never make the leap. And they probably, not say they made the right or wrong decision, but that happens probably too. Any advice for CFOs who might be thinking about starting their own company?
I think having domain expertise in anything makes you incredibly useful, especially with AI now. Like, how do I stack things that I'm good at, that I'm interested in, and uniquely qualified to opine on to create like a one of one? And that's what I've tried to do with the media company I'm building. Like, there aren't that many great resources out there for finance people, specifically in the tech world, or finance people and C suite leaders within private equity companies. And I think, like, for anyone who's looking to start a company, start like extremely small. And that was a mistake that I made at my first company that I tried to start in the tourism industry. I tried to like launch it in every state at once. Like, that was stupid. I should have went niche down to the south of the US, then to Florida, and then to like Tampa within Florida launching it. And I think the same goes for anything that you start, whether it's like an application for like fintech companies to use, or like a any really software. You want to niche down to figure out that core use case, and you got to wake up every morning loving it. This is something that I talked to James Courier, founding partner of NFX venture firm, on my podcast. He's like, you got to wake up every day loving the skateboard. You have to wake up every day wanting to solve that problem with the skateboard and being the best at that before you can become the convertible. And I think a lot of people want to start a company out there and they want to be the Ferrari at first, but it's like you have to start solving something at like an extremely specific level to understand your customer need, and then you can go from there.
Love that. That's very great sage advice from someone who's done it. CJ, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Could we just go through again where people can find you on the internet?
Yeah, you're a gracious host. Great questions. So just go to mostlymetrics.com. That's a newsletter. Run the Numbers. Kind of sounds like Run DMC. Run the Numbers is on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and then Looking for Leverage, lookingforleverage.com is also on the interweb. But if you go to mostlymetrics.com, I point to all of it.
Cool. And we'll link to it in the show notes. Yeah, I strongly encourage you guys to check out the content. It's super interesting. If you're an experienced like finance professional operator, I think this will definitely resonate. And if you're new and you're, just starting your career, I think this is a great place to get smart quickly on a bunch of business topics. Thank you, CJ. Thanks for coming on the pod.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.